Hello and welcome. This is Omar Torres, and you're listening to Pop Therapy, a podcast that explores the intersection between psychology and pop culture. There's so much to unpack, so join me and let's get started. Well, we made it through another week. Hi, it's me, Omar, your friendly neighborhood therapist, and I wanted to touch on two things with you rather quickly. So first, I recently binged. Binge is a strong word. I finished it within a week. I finished the second season of Beef on Netflix, which I highly recommend. Every once in a while, there will be a TV show that leaves me wondering if they had a therapist on staff or on set, or if like a writer consulted with a therapist. And I typically see that as like a really good sign, a really good sign of like solid performance or solid writing or solid storytelling. So I'm not going to give away any major plot points, so relax. But if you don't want any plot points, not even a minor subplot point, then just like fast forward a couple of minutes and skip over this part. But in any case, the show mostly revolves around these two couples. One couple has been together for many years. They're a married couple played by Oscar Isaac and Carey Mulligan. And then there's another couple recently engaged. They've been together for about a year or a year and a half, I think. And that couple is played by Charles Melton and Kaylee Spaney. Yes. So one of the things that got me thinking about whether or not they had a therapist on staff was all of the little ways in which your average relationship kind of like, this is going to sound more extreme than I mean, but like all of the little ways you annoy and or like piss off your partner, or all of the little ways in which you chip away at their, I don't know, like at their confidence in some way, or at their patience, really, more likely. All of these like little paper cuts that, you know, in the moment don't seem like that big of a deal, but over time become these major pain points. And it just had me thinking about all the couples that I've worked with where I would do a history of the relationship. I would do a history of, you know, just like, how did y'all meet? And, you know, what were some of the signs that you noticed, like there was trouble on the horizon? And you could always trace that back to almost the beginning, when both individuals in the relationship were sort of feeling these like little slights, these little moments that kind of stung a little bit, but in the moment it didn't seem like a big enough deal. And I think this show does such a great job of that. And the couple that the married couple that have been together for a really long time sort of serve as like a portal into the future for the couple, the newly engaged couple, right? It's like if you keep going down this path, you will end up behaving like this couple that have been together for a really long time, this married couple. And you see, right, Charles Melton and Kaylee Spaney, you see them in their performance do these little things that cause like little mini tears or ruptures in the relationship, little moments where it sort of like chips away at the trust or something like that. And I just remember thinking how wonderfully subtle those moments were, right? Like relationships are often those little moments, right? Those little moments that either make or break a relationship. And I just thought Beef season 2 did such a good job of that. So I highly recommend. I'm going to shift gears a little bit now. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to take your time really thinking about this. All right. I want to ask you, I want you to think about, when was the last time you got amazing sleep? When was the last time you woke up feeling incredibly rested, energized, ready to take on the world, ready to take on the day? When was the last time you had a night's sleep like that? And I just want you to think about how that day went. what was that day like for you? And I also want you to think about your own attitude during that day, right? After you had the wonderful night's rest. What was your attitude like? What were you like? One of the things that in my years of being a therapist, one of the things that has been coming up more and more, or maybe it's more like I'm realizing it more and more, is that many times a conversation that I have with a client about being really angry or upset or irritated, sometimes the conversation goes back to how did you sleep the night before? Many times, right? And that's not to say that they didn't have a reason to be upset. And that's certainly not to say that there wasn't something that we needed to tend to or address. But a crappy night's sleep really does impact your ability to problem solve, your ability to regulate yourself. And so I don't think there's a ton of conversation culturally, right? I'm not seeing a ton in the world of pop culture about the importance of sleep and how and all of the acute ways that sleep impacts you. Like, yes, of course, if you have a terrible night's rest, you're like tired the rest of the day. That's sort of it, right? That's like the conversation is, oh, if you got terrible sleep, then the next day you're not going to be as productive, right? That's sort of the statement that we're left with. That's like kind of it. But it's so much more than that. You know what I mean? It really does impact your attitude. It really does impact your ability to regulate or to assess things clearly and accurately. It really does impact your ability to like be patient when that line at the coffee shop is taking just a little bit too long. I swear to God, after a full night's rest, I'm like, oh, I can stay in this line forever. I don't have a care in the world. I am okay. I'm fine. But after a terrible night's rest, I am ready to like start pulling my hair out and screaming. And I'm like, if this line does not move, I will set this place on fire. that is how drastic of an attitude shift that can happen for me, especially if I don't get good sleep. And, and again, there's not a ton of conversation culturally about sleep and its importance. I think it's sort of implied, like, yeah, does sleep is important, but we don't really get into the nitty gritty or into the specifics as to why it's important. We don't really talk about concretely and practically why it's important outside of you're not going to be able to be as productive. You won't be able to get as much done. You won't be able to, make as much money. But there is so much more to that, which is why I'm so excited to bring in our guest. This is someone who is a little bit of an expert in the area of sleep. And so I'm really thrilled to bring him on. Please welcome into your hearts, friend, colleague, fellow therapist, Dr. Jim Scholl. Hi.
Hi, Omar. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for coming on. I wanted to ask you, what were you thinking as I was talking about wanting to set a coffee house on fire, a coffee shop on fire if I did not get enough sleep?
Violence is never the answer.
Good
And it
answer. This is
sounded
why I
kind
brought
of
you
like a
on.
threat. No, it actually, though, it seemed like immediately it feels so relatable because even though I have this specialization, I still have bad night's sleep, and I'm the exact same way living in a place like New York.
Oh my God.
It's so easy to be irritated. Hot take, I love Times Square. I think it's like a really special place.
Oh my God.
I can give you my
Title of episode already. Hot take. I love Times Square. I think that's it.
Well, I can give you my thesis on it later, but I think it's like a place that people come to from all over the world and are so
Yeah.
excited to be there. And if you have the energy and the capacity to appreciate that, it's so beautiful. But if you're tired and consequently in a bad mood, it's like the worst place in the world. So I
Oh
think it can
yeah.
like exist in both the full like spectrum of love
Yes.
hate based on how much energy you have to deal with that.
Yeah. So tell, for those who don't know, talk to us a little bit about the work that you do and what you specialize in. Why don't we start there?
Okay. So I'm a clinical psychologist. I have been involved in sleep related research for about a decade and about the same amount of time doing clinical work, providing treatment primarily to people suffering with insomnia and
So a
um,
decade. Wow. So you started when you were what, 12, I'm assuming?
oh my gosh. Exactly. I was a child prodigy. Um, no, close so, in the sense that when I was in my first semester of undergrad, I started working in a trauma research center that primarily focused on trauma-related sleep disturbances.
Oh, wow.
So, like, from, like, my very earliest, like, formal educate the sort of the start of my, like, formal education after high school, I was sort of immersed into this world of trauma and sleep disorders. So and for good reason, I think it, sort of captured me as something that is, like, a universal experience. So even if you don't have insomnia,
Right.
or PTSD or nightmares, in a chronic way, almost I think not almost everybody can relate to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether
Because
you're getting enough sleep or not, you can relate to, oh, I have a relationship to sleep and I'm familiar with sleep, you
yeah,
know?
everyone does. We have to. It's the
Yeah.
foundation of our existence.
Right. Was that something that was always on your vision board professionally? Was that something that you were always interested in understanding more, or did you sort of start out thinking, well, I want to do some research on trauma. That's what really kind of like interests me, and then and by way of trauma, you were like, oh, sleep. She really is that girl. Maybe maybe I
She
should see what's
really is that college. I mean, she is.
she is.
Um, none of the above. I actually wish I had a more compelling I've written some good essays to, like, get into grad school about this, where I made up a lot of, like, connections,
Yeah.
in my life.
Haven't we
Like, I
all?
can make a compelling story, but the reality is, when I was a freshman in college, I took, like, an intro to psych course, and the professor was explaining that, if you want to become a psychologist or you want to sort of pursue higher education in this field, you really need to get involved in research. It's an important foundational piece
Right.
of our field. And she studies, shout out Dr. Joanne Davis, a brilliant psychologist who developed what's now known as cognitive behavioral therapy for nightmares. And she was talking about nightmares and just sort of at a high level and my 19-year-old brain was like, I don't have any friends. I have nothing to do. I should join a research lab. And so I went and spoke to her about it. And she was like, okay, well, what are you interested in? What do you want to study? And I was like, Nightmares?
Sure.
Um, so it really was just kind of like this little, like, unexpected sequence of events that led me there. And I mean, I think I actually find in anyone who's exposed to that concept, like, nightmares are just generally fascinating.
Yeah, for sure.
Dreams are like a fun topic of conversation.
Yeah.
So I think it sort of captured my interest and sort of then built from there. I became exposed. We studied several things within the field of trauma, but what sort of has been a hallmark of my entire training and professional development was working on clinical trials and treatment outcome studies for trauma-related sleep disturbances and PTSD. And what then happened over time is I realized that, well, one, there's existing research that puts forth sleep as the hallmark, sleep disturbances as a hallmark of PTSD, because
Mm,
in many ways it is one of the major barriers that prevents recovery. So
right.
you can take someone into a treatment protocol that is the gold standard, like cognitive processing therapy, and complete the full course, and you'll see symptom reduction. I think
Sure.
for most people, prolonged exposure therapy as well, like, work incredibly well. However, won't fully resolve symptoms.
Right. Right.
But what the research is now supporting is an assertion. I didn't come up with this, Dr. Davis, was like, well, what if we always treat the sleep disturbances first? Will that make a huge
Right.
impact? And it it sounds so
Shockingly.
intuitive. Shockingly,
Right.
if you
Right.
can get a full night's rest, I mean, and conceptually, it makes so much sense, right? When you're sleeping, you're consolidating information,
Right.
and memories and processing emotions. So, of course, PTSD symptoms would improve
Yeah.
when you're getting full, like, consolidated night's rest. And so then that sort of blew up further as I pursued my own um, work, in realizing that it sort of is an underlying factor in a lot of the psychological distress that
So
people
many.
experience more broadly. So,
Oh, yeah.
you know, almost any intake I've ever done, I ask people about their experience of sleep. And I don't know the last person who told me that they're like, "Oh, no, I sleep like an angel."
That is so true. And so there's a few thoughts that come to mind right now. So one is essentially like, this may sound obvious, but which is what you're speaking to, right? It's like, oh yeah, duh. But like traditional the talk therapy can be great and is great. However, treating sleep issues first can make that treatment even better, right? Like if you're not getting enough rest, there's talk therapy can only go so far if you're not getting enough rest. Why do you think? I don't know. I guess I don't even know if I'm asking the question correctly, but like hearing you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, duh. But like, why didn't we why did we need research to tell us that? Why do you think we needed research to tell us that as opposed to understanding it right away? Like I wonder if that reflects something about our relationship to sleep, some sort of fraughtness or tension between us and sleep that we didn't immediately sort of realize, like, oh yes, of course the hallmark of great mental health is great sleep, because I don't hear that connection being made, at least vocally, very often. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think there's a couple of things. You're right. And even when I learned it myself, I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. How come I didn't consider that previously? I mean, I think it's a cultural issue. I mean, a
Mm-hmm.
big part is
Mm-hmm.
people not believing in or appreciating the importance of sleep. I don't think that, as far as I'm aware, most health classes don't really spend time sort of helping introduce people to the importance of sleep, how it works, what all is functioning
Right.
while you sleep. I think in general, the culture that we live in the US especially is so oriented towards productivity
Yeah.
that sleep has been viewed as something that inhibits productivity.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can think of countless examples of famous people in positions of power who are bragging about how they only get 4 hours of sleep a night,
Yes.
and that's, like, the secret to their success. So, there's that piece of it. To give credit as well, also, there's just, the field of sleep research is I mean, it's been around for a while, but, what we now have in terms of tools haven't always existed. So,
Mm-hmm.
what I anticipate we'll talk more about today is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. But it really wasn't until more recently that it sort of gained a level of support from like the American Medical Association and talking
Ah.
about how this can be like a frontline treatment for sleep disorders. So I think there's like it's been an emerging field. And to be fair, also, what I will say, and one of the most fascinating things about having previously been somebody who is studying sleep, is it's still, I mean, it's like space, right? It's something that we still
Mm.
don't fully, completely
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
We're nowhere close to fully understanding exactly how and why it sort of takes the structure that it does and the full extent to what's happening while we sleep. So it's still this sort of area of that needs future study.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Space, it's often referred to as the final frontier. And it's like, well, maybe sleep is actually the final frontier, because similarly, it seems and sounds so expansive. And it does still like conjure up an aura of like mystery for me. There's just like, you're right. Like there's still so much that we don't know about it. You touched on something earlier that I appreciated and that I was thinking a lot about too, which is the way sleep is spoken about in pop culture, and in the face of hyperproductivity, and in the face of like optimization and like living longer, but optimizing every minute of your life and making sure that you're the most productive and efficient person possible. I was going to ask if you thought that impacted sleep, and it sounds like yes, it sounds like you do see the connection between this sort of like we have to optimize every minute of our lives and lack of sleep or lack of like quality sleep.
Mhm. No, absolutely. I think, you know, the cultural piece of it, certainly there's this world in which people view it as like a burden or a
Mm,
hassle or something that's limiting them from being as successful as they could be. And, or even framed, this idea of like sleep being framed as like laziness rather than a biological
yeah.
necessity.
Right.
And what's sad is we sort of then swung into the other direction where sleep gets talked about in the world of like optimization culture and
Mhm.
turning sleep into like a performance metric where you're trying to
Oof.
track and perfect it.
Right.
And they've come up with all of these like apps and beds and mattresses where you're tracking like REM percentages and sleep scores. And it really misses one of the ways that I like to talk about sleep is moving away from this idea of it being like a task, and really thinking of it as a relationship that we have,
Mm.
with sort of an aspect of ourselves,
Yeah.
because it isn't, at the end of the day, you can't control it, right?
Right.
Whether it's because of environmental factors that are influencing your sleep or internal psychological factors, you can't win or control or like beat sleep.
Right.
Sleep always wins.
Right.
In part because, like I said, I'll probably say it again at some point today. It's like the foundation of our existence.
Right.
Everything relies on Everything that we do in our waking life relies on sleep, like our basic survival.
Right.
Um, but it's not so clear cut as like, if you take your medication, it resolves your symptoms, or like if there's no like easy singular behavior.
Right.
Just like a part in a romantic relationship or
100%.
relationship with a
That's what I
friend,
was thinking of. Yep. Hmm.
there's no one thing that you can do that will work every
Every
single time.
time, 100%. Yeah. And so that's why I like the analogy of thinking about sleep as a relationship, because it is as unique as any relationship. Like you said, there is no one size fits all approach. Every relationship is different. Every relationship has all these variables that impact the way that it operates and thus impacts treatments or interventions or even just like pieces of advice and stuff like that, which I really appreciate. You mentioned cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. So that's CBTI, right?
Mhm.
And then there's CBTN for nightmares. Is there a pretty big difference between the two? They sound similar, well, but it sounds like there's overlap, but maybe there isn't. You tell me.
Yeah. Well, there is a good deal of overlap. If you were to pursue training in CBTI or you've gone through a course of CBTI, you'd see a lot of the same material. The major distinction, CBTN is like part of a rebrand, I think, in part because of its overlap.
Okay.
It sort of stems from a previous treatment that existed called exposure, prescription, or relaxation therapy, um, that involves, the sort of sleep hygiene components that you would see in CBTI, but adds with it a much more trauma focused component,
Okay.
which I will clarify. You can also use it with people who experience idiopathic nightmares, so non trauma related nightmares as
I
well.
see.
When it was developed, it was the cognitive component, which you do in CBTI, became very focused on the most common themes that exist within, or the sort of most common themes that are reported in survivors of trauma and those with
Okay.
PTSD. So things like you focus on the cognitive pieces related to things like power and control,
Ooh.
esteem, intimacy, safety, and sort of do some work to resolve those thoughts. And the nightmare treatment also is really it's hard to explain in like short form,
Uh-huh.
but there's a creative element to it as well, where you do something called rescripting,
Oh,
where
yeah.
you write out the nightmare
Right.
itself, and then you change components within it reflective of those trauma-related themes. So, for
Right.
example, if the nightmare involves like a sense of powerlessness, you give yourself power in the nightmare, and then you read it back to yourself at night before bed.
Right. Okay.
And it doesn't, most people don't have that new dream, but it sort of helps your brain appreciate that a nightmare is not real, right? It's a
Mm,
memory, and or it's a distorted memory,
right.
right? It's something that has grown over time, and so it kind of dissolves the power and intensity that it has.
Gotcha. And so, what does a typical session for a CBTI therapist as yourself look like? Is there a lot of rescripting going on, or is less so?
Yeah, less so. There isn't, we don't. We could certainly talk about dreams and CBTI, but what I love about CBTI, I'm gonna keep saying that as well, is that it's, highly structured, it's time limited, usually lasts around 5 sessions, depending if there's, like, co-occurring disorders, it might be extended further,
Sure.
but if you've ever been in any kind of cognitive behavioral therapy, it'll look somewhat similar in that we'll start with setting an agenda,
Yeah.
reviewing your sleep diary. So we have people track on a daily basis, the time they went to bed, they woke up,
Okay.
how many nighttime awakenings they had,
Hmm.
things like that, and use that data to drive treatment decisions.
Right.
So there's something called sleep restriction, where you're minimizing the amount of time that you spend in bed while you're not sleeping,
Mm.
which you would then modify based on that data, and it's called your sleep prescription.
Okay.
So we set like each week you set a new wake time and time you go to bed. Um, and then, depending as the sessions progress, it changes what we focus on. Every session always includes an element of psychoeducation.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most foundational. It's one of the foundational pieces of the treatment, and it's why treatment CBTI is more successful, I think, in an actual therapeutic setting as opposed to like an app or some sort of learning
Right.
protocol. Is
Right.
anybody can tell you, you shouldn't drink caffeine before bed.
Sure.
But this treatment really allows you to go deeper into, the habits or behaviors that you might be engaging in that are maladaptive, and really get to learn why it's so important, and how sort of, specific chemicals or neurotransmitters in your body are working that impact your sleep. It like builds all this justification. So when you're making that change, or working towards behavior change, it's so much easier if you understand why you should make that change in the first place.
Right, right. And so
So
it sounds like there's a solid amount of conversation around sleep hygiene. Is that,
Mhm.
would that be fair to say? Like I think of, for example, not spending a ton of time awake time in bed. And to me, I would classify that as sleep hygiene. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so one of the three components um, to cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia.
Uh-huh.
I need to stop saying it.
CBTI, it's okay. We got it.
CBTI um, is what's called stimulus control, which is really about changing your relationship with your bed and the environment in which sleep
Ah,
occurs.
okay.
And so that's where we think of like where like the idea of like sleep hygiene comes
Yeah.
from. It's funny, I have, like, some, like, reaction to this idea. I think it's just been the term has been overused now,
I see. And like
and for some
watered
reason,
down a little
well,
bit?
and I don't know why there's this, like, connotation with, like, clean or cleanliness, because in many ways, like, sleep is kind of a messy relationship. Um,
Right.
but it is like that is sort of a foundational educational piece, but not what I would say, it's not like the most impactful component of the
Ah,
treatment, but
okay.
it is at a baseline really important for people to understand, the importance of environment. For example, understanding that temperature can play a major role in the quality of sleep that you receive. The number one tip, and probably the most important thing that if anybody were to ask me, like, what's the most important thing to remember about sleep? Consistency in your sleep wake time, because that sort of is
Interesting.
what allow your body, our bodies and our minds crave routine.
Right.
Like it's our baseline state. It's what we want. And so that consistent sleep wake time really allows your body to know when and how to release hormones and neurotransmitters that
Gotcha.
allow you to, regulate throughout the day, give you energy when it's appropriate, and then be sleepy by the time it's time to
Wow.
go to bed.
So would you say that consistency is maybe even more impactful than how long you sleep for? Would you say that consistency is probably more impactful than that even? Or are they the same? How would you rank them if you had to?
Um,
And that might be unfair, but you
I
can say,
think it's
and you can say that that's like a really hard question, but
no, I think that it is. I mean, I just for fun, I want to rank it as more important. Um, Only in that if you are consistent, even if you're getting less sleep than would be optimal,
uh-huh.
at the very least, your body will start to anticipate and understand what's coming, and it will sort of work
Oh.
within those parameters. The reason I also want to rank quantity second is just because there's so many sort of misconceptions and myths about how much sleep people actually need.
Mhm.
And the more consistent you are, that will actually start to teach you about how much sleep you need. You can learn for yourself how much sleep you need as an individual.
Right.
Um, because if you have this consistent schedule where you're sleeping, 6 hours a night every night and you're really routined, you'll adapt fairly well, but you'll likely still experience daytime sleepiness or
Yeah.
some other symptom that would then inform you. It's like, okay, well, maybe the schedule is roughly pretty good, but I need to extend the actual amount of time I'm
I
sleeping.
see what you mean. So you touched on some common myths and misconceptions. What are some of the more common ones that come up for you in your work with clients that you're having to like debunk or help them unlearn? What are the ones that come up the most for you?
That's a good question. I mean, we've touched on this a little bit. The biggest sort of piece, especially in the world of optimization, the biggest myth is that you can control it.
Mm,
And that a big sort of influx of data can be really useful to you. I
right.
think actually it can be incredibly maladaptive as it can promote anxiety about what you're
Yeah.
not getting.
I've heard that too. I've heard of friends of mine who get the wristband or the ring or the whatever that tracks your sleep, and then it suddenly becomes almost like an exam that you have to study for, and there's like a looming nature to the data where you're going to wake up and get information, and a lot of the times if you didn't get really good sleep, so you're now anticipating that data basically telling you like you failed or whatever, and all of that causing way more anxiety than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure. And I'll sort of tie that into this conversation about myths is, the assumption that sleep is a purely objective metric to be measured. Because what we know is that there is subjective sleep quality and objective sleep
Ah.
quality. And your subjective perception of your sleep directly impacts your perception,
Wait a
your
minute. You are
experience of
blowing
it.
my mind, Jim. I did not know this. Wait, hold on 1 second. Let me make sure I'm understanding you correctly. So, your thoughts and feelings about your sleep are, are also play a crucial role in your actual sleep quality. Is that basically what, like, how you think and feel about your sleep quality impacts your sleep quality, regardless of whether or not you actually did, you know, objectively get good or not good sleep?
Yeah, so
Holy shit.
I
That's like, I mean, I'm sorry. It's like one of those moments where I'm like, I guess, duh, but also this is shocking to me. I did not, I didn't know that. Wow. Okay. Sorry. I'll let you finish. Please.
No, I think that it's like one of the most fascinating realizations to have is how, but we see this in all other aspects of our lives as well, right? Like this connection between our minds and our bodies, and they're
Totally.
so
Totally.
inextricably linked. The best sort of complementary example I have is thinking about the idea of stress, right? Like stress can be objectively stressful, but stress is very much subjectively stressful. It's based
Yeah.
in an appraisal of like how we look at a situation
Of
and
course.
like sort of assessing our capacity to manage it, which then directly ties into our body's release of cortisol,
Right.
that can impact our health, our like our physical health in these really
Right.
dramatic ways. Sleep is the same way, right? We can, there's I'm trying to think. There's like a famous, I don't know how famous it is in my world, a really, I think a meaningful study that came out, where it looked at basically studied people's sleep, how much REM they got, how
Okay.
much time they spend in each stage, and then when the participants got out, the researchers lied to them and would tell them, that either their sleep was like really incredible or their sleep was really terrible. And how they then felt throughout the day was in part dependent on like the information they were told about these things.
Shut
So
up.
it didn't matter how well they actually slept. What mattered was what had been told to them and what they believed about their sleep.
This is blowing my, I was going to say blowing my face off, but this is blowing my mind right off. So how does that fact that this is crazy? My mind is like the wheels are turning now. So how does that inform a treatment session? Like, I guess I'm thinking then, oh, so there must be some kind of conversation around helping a client develop a better subjective relationship to their sleep? Is that like part of the treatment as well then?
Yeah. Not like sort of explicitly, but I do think it
Okay.
is that's like where the cognitive piece comes in, right?
Yeah.
Is understanding how you think and feel about sleep,
Mm,
is going to have an
mm,
impact, whether it's in terms of promoting hyperarousal before bed, right? There's actually a whole area of study, around the concept of fear of sleep,
okay.
where people have such a bad relationship with bed and sleeping that they start to develop a fear where they get anxiety just anticipating going to bed.
Okay.
And so, as you go through this is what's so interesting about this treatment and why I love doing it, and it keeps me so engaged, is that no two treatments look the same, because
Mm,
you're really looking at and examining, just like you would in a romantic
of
relationship. You might
course.
see patterns and overlap,
Of
but
course.
each relationship is unique to those two individuals. So each person has like a very unique way of looking at and thinking about their relationship to sleep. Whether, I worked with people who, what they develop over time, in addition to sort of the criteria for insomnia, is an association, especially with the information that's sort of being pumped out through social media, like developed a real fear of dying. Like they
Mm,
connected a lack of sleep with death. And then over time, it became like a persistent fear. Before they went to bed every night, they would think about how, like, if I don't get a good night's sleep, I'm going to die.
oh,
And you can
wow.
imagine how that would then blow up, and sort of dramatically impact your like daytime well-being, because you're just thinking to yourself throughout your day, like, well, this is my brain deteriorating.
Right.
And
Right. Great.
wait,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Guess I'll be
um,
dying soon. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But so helping people appreciate and understand that even just the way that you start your day, and sometimes I've worked with people before where we come up with a whole routine for the fact that it's expected, again, no matter how good you are at sleeping. Like, I think of myself as like a sleep expert.
Uh-huh.
I'm like at a 10.
Yeah.
However, I still have bad nights of sleep on occasion,
Sure.
depending on what's happening in your life. Um, your sleep will get disrupted. And so having a plan then of how you're going to, one, acknowledge and normalize that experience. And then we'll have, with this one case I'm thinking of in particular, we developed like a morning routine where it was like, okay, this is what you do on those days where you didn't get a good night's sleep, to help sort of like couch all of those fears and frustrations and irritations that arise. And it's like, okay, no, this is totally normal. And here's how you're going to start your day. And this is what you're going to make sure that you do to maintain energy levels.
Right.
And so it really helps. It's like working with the relationship
Right.
as opposed to building up a wall and a sense of frustration about why it's not working for you. It's like every night is a new opportunity
Yeah.
and sort of shifting the way people look at it to know that it's like, okay, I can no matter what happens, I have a new opportunity that's ahead of me. And what's important is how I work with that in the daytime.
Right. There's a lot of, I mean, a lot is maybe a little hyperbolic, but the idea of catching up on sleep, I feel like every 3 to 5 years, there's an article or there's a study or there's something that reaches mainstream media and conversations. And one of those things for me is this concept of catching up on sleep. Once upon a time, conventional wisdom had us thinking that if you got really terrible sleep one day, you make up for it the next day or later on that week. You'll catch up on it on Saturday. And that's sort of how you balanced it all out. And then some expose comes out or something like that and basically says there's no such thing as catching up on sleep. You can't catch up on sleep. If those hours missed, they're gone forever, which I don't know, drudged up another kind of like new fear unlocked kind of mentality.
Mhm.
What is amongst researchers, what is the consensus on catching up on sleep? Like, what is the thought behind that? Does it work? Is it helpful? Does it even exist? Should we be reframing that altogether? What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's certainly nuance to it. There's a reason some of that language exists. I think the biggest problem, right, is even the suggestion that like the use of the word debt, because that
Mm,
it implies that you can pay it back
pay it off.
in some way.
Right, right,
Yeah, and so there certainly is truth in the fact that if you're getting like if you have a completely sleepless night, the next night you might sleep longer, and sure, your functioning will probably return to a baseline, especially in the short term. But if it's not like an equal exchange, and you can only catch up so much, right? The
right.
the challenge becomes if you have sort of chronic sleep debt
Yeah.
or you're consistently not getting enough sleep, that's likely going to have detrimental impacts on your mental health and well-being
Hmm.
that sleeping then starting to sleep 8 hours a night or whatever you happen to need, 6 to 8 hours roughly, um, it's not going to just alleviate all of those problems.
Right.
Getting good sleep is helpful. I like to say everything is better in the morning after you've slept, but it doesn't just sort of erase the damage done. So
Yeah.
it's not as simple. I think it's a language problem where it's suggestion that like, oh, it's a debt that you can pay off.
Right. There's something about it that to me comes across as like one to one. It's very like if you missed an hour of sleep, just add another, tack on an extra hour of sleep the next day, and you are neutralizing whatever effects that lack of an hour cost you. But that's not necessarily how it looks, especially not in the long term. Like maybe you miss 1 hour and that's it. But if you're constantly missing minutes or hours of sleep on a regular basis, it's like then there really is no way of quote unquote catching up or paying off the debt, really.
No. And I think what's difficult as well, there's so many different extremes, right? I use the example of not having any sleep. Whereas if like you stay up later one night, the recommendation actually would be to not try and recover with additional sleep. It would be return to your routine.
Oh,
Because again, when we think about what sort of is getting disruptive or what is the challenge that a person is facing as a result of sleep deprivation, part of that comes from our bodies being confused about when to be releasing certain hormones. And
I
so
see. I
the
see.
consistency piece comes back into play where sometimes I think the healthiest or the best mindset to take is that like you are going to lose sleep in your lifetime. There's going to be nights where for all kinds of reasons, having children, you stay out too late at a party.
Yeah.
Um,
You're at
I
the
think sometimes we have
club,
to just
something
you're
like
at the
that.
club. Yeah. You but I think in sometimes I also want to clarify that that's okay too, right?
Right.
There's worthy sacrifices. We're giving up a couple of hours of sleep for our mental health and
Yeah.
for, the
Relationships, connection.
relationship, social
Totally.
yeah, connection, it makes so much sense to make that sacrifice. The important thing is in jumping back into your consistent routine and just accepting it as a little bit of a loss
Yeah, and being okay with that. Just
and
like
being okay with that.
it's fine, it's okay, it's not the end of the world. Wait, so okay, so the best advice for, let's say, like, you lose a little bit of sleep, or you stayed out super late. The best advice is actually not to sleep in, but to basically wake up around the same time you would normally wake up, and then go about your routine the way you would normally go about it as best as you can. Obviously, you're going to feel, like death, maybe lethargic, a little sluggish and slow, but actually, it's about maintaining that routine. That's like the key here to recovering.
Yeah. So, yeah,
Fascinating.
there's a
That really upsets me because I want to sleep. That bums me out because I really thought, like, oh, I could just sleep the day away, and that's the best. I have to listen to my body. I need to rest more. I need to stay in bed more. But actually, no.
That's the funny thing is we're trying to listen to our bodies, but our bodies are confused. And so if you think about what the actual
Right,
sleep quality you're getting when you're
right.
getting in, it's like it's just steadily declining from like the time your body thinks you're supposed to wake up, you reduce the amount of melatonin your body's releasing and increase the amount of cortisol your body's producing, which gives you energy and sort of wakes you up and
Right.
gets you going. And so you may still be asleep, but you don't have any melatonin left, and
Right.
your cortisol is slowly building. So maybe you're only in like stage one of like a very light sleep that's not even restorative. And then when you sleep in, it can be more difficult that night to fall asleep at your regular bedtime because you have, you're, it's like not, it's like trusting your body and not always trusting your body.
Right. It's
It's
like
a,
trusting your body, but knowing when she's confused, when your
yeah,
body's a
which they
lit.
often
Right, right.
the other day I described I was like, our minds have in many ways evolved over time in this like truly impressive way, and our bodies are kind of prehistoric. Like it's like an old they still use like floppy disks.
Yeah, yeah.
Um and like they take a while to catch up. They don't like they cannot keep up with like this like supercharged computer of a brain that we have.
Oh my
So
gosh. Fascinating. Okay. Yeah.
and I yeah, so your specific example of, like, going out, staying out too late, yeah, the ideal recommendation, ideally,
Yeah.
is to wake up at your regularly scheduled wake time, and then just plan and accommodate around that day, like, knowing that you're going to be a little bit more tired, but it's like your warm up for the next night of really good sleep. You're like,
Oh,
"You know what?
okay.
I've got today I'm gonna feel tired, but I'm gonna nail it tonight. I'm
Okay.
gonna, like, come back swinging and get, like, the
Right.
best 8 hours of my life."
Okay. Gotcha.
And I think you're most likely to be successful if you take that approach as and again, as someone who is certainly, like, woken up and it's, like, 2 p.m. in my
Right.
youth,
Right.
when I was 12. Um,
In your
I
research, your early research days when you were 12.
yeah,
Yeah,
as a child
totally.
prodigy. Um, and, uh, it was just, and again, it starts that's actually where insomnia starts for most people, is something happens or changes in their environment, right? It's usually not just, like, one night out, but maybe it's a couple of nights out, or, you've been really stressed out at work,
Yeah.
and so you start increasing your caffeine intake, and then you're, like, buzzing all day, and then you're like having these brief crashes. It's usually these small little changes, life stressors that start, and then you accommodate those life stressors. You make changes in your life to rather than, maintain focus on like good sleep as like the important foundation in your survival of this time.
Mhm.
You start to figure out how do I cut back on my sleep? And then it builds into this, like, vicious cycle, like, it
Yeah.
it really is it's sad and fascinating how easy it is to, start to develop, like, a pathology around your sleep
Right.
simply by making changes that seem intuitive at the time, right? Like, "Okay, I couldn't fall asleep until 2, so now I'm just gonna let myself, sleep in, and I'm gonna feel better the next day." but that I it seems
Which you
intuitive, but
don't
it's really
actually.
the
Right.
least helpful things you can do for yourself.
Wow. So, I mean, a few thoughts. One, in thinking about the mind body relationship and sort of like how super powered the mind is, or how like maybe advanced the mind is compared to the body. It's like it's like when you are FaceTiming an older parent and you FaceTime them and it's like up their nose, the screen, and you're like, no, mom, dad, it's not, no, you have to pull the phone away. And I'm imagining the mind is like the younger child trying to help their parent slash the body in this instance, like use FaceTime properly. It's just like has not kept up with the technology and is trying its best, but really doesn't know what the hell is going on. And the mind is like, get it together. I'm trying to help you. Please keep up.
Well, and that's where I think all the frustration and the tension builds, like, you're
Yeah.
not appreciating your body for what it is. I mean, our bodies are incredible in so many ways, but they are, again, they're not staying up with modern technology.
Right.
But when you take a more gentle approach to that, right, again, building frustration around your body not responding to your brain immediately is just going to increase the likelihood that you continue to have bad sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it's, and but what I will say is wonderful, and usually this is not always the case, but the thought is that you can really reset your circadian rhythm
Hmm.
in about 2 weeks. And
Okay.
so that's when people start to see changes in their sleep in the first 2 weeks of treatment. It's
Ah.
not fully resolved, but the change starts to occur because that's about how long it takes for the signal to be clearly transmitted from your brain to your body, where your body's like, "Oh, this is what we're doing.
Oh,
Now I
wow.
understand." But that's what I'm
Gotcha.
sure if you called your parents every day, for
If you
2
face
weeks,
right, they would eventually get
they would
FaceTime.
eventually be
Yeah.
yeah, if you kept saying, "Hello,
Right. No,
show me your
pull the
face,"
phone
pull
out.
back, pull
Hold
back.
the phone. Yeah.
It probably would take them about 2 weeks, and they'd be on top of it.
Right. That is really hopeful and helpful to know that, for anyone listening, if you are struggling with sleep, that about 2 weeks is when you'll start seeing some progress, especially if you work with a specialist like Jim. I think part of the fear with most treatments, especially when like the mind is involved, it's just like the fear that you will be struggling with this for months and months and months and years before you start to feel better. So it's really nice to hear that it can be as little as 2 weeks before you start to see and notice changes and stuff like that.
I mean, that's why, again, another reason I don't know if this makes me sound a certain way, but, like, one of the things that's really drawn me, well, both initially to, sleep disorders and PTSD, is that these are mental health conditions that you can see recovery from. Like,
Yeah.
you can see somebody I've worked with, Vietnam era veterans who spent their entire lives, like 50 plus years with nightmares. And then in 5 sessions, they don't have any more nightmares.
Wow.
And if you think about that, it's a very specific example, but you think about the idea nightmares, we use the waking criteria as a definition.
What's that?
The distinction between a bad dream and a nightmare is so intense, it's so activating physiologically and emotionally and psychologically that you wake up from it.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
many
Okay.
people have bad dreams.
Right.
Significantly fewer have like waking criteria nightmares. But people who have PTSD and nightmares will sometimes have those every single
Yep.
night.
Right.
So can you imagine, right, being woken up in the middle of the night every single night with this intense surge of fear?
Oof.
And then after 5 sessions and 5 weeks, no more.
No
They
more.
go away. It's and sleep, it's the same way. Sometimes, especially the longer you leave it and the
Hmm.
more bad habits you develop and the more fraught your relationship becomes, to go back to, like, the idea of, like, couples therapy, right? The longer you wait to go to couples therapy, sometimes
Yeah.
the harder it is to resolve the
Oh, yeah.
problem. But, like, I love this treatment because it actually has one of the highest success rates, I think, of any psychological treatment.
Yeah.
Effectiveness is around 70 to 80%, which is,
Whoa.
like, a good 20 to 30% higher than most psychological
Yeah.
treatments. So you're seeing most people, the vast majority, experience improvement. I've actually never worked with anybody in the past decade that didn't see improvement, and most people within that sample experience full recovery.
Oh, that is wonderful to hear. That must feel so good for you to see
Oh, yeah.
also as a clinician, like
That's why
after
I love it.
5 yeah.
That's why I love, well, because there's other
Yeah,
types of things that are lifelong challenges
right.
that there's also something, meaningful and powerful about working with somebody over the course of several years and really helping them sort of like evolve and change in their
For sure,
lives.
for sure.
That is, but like, I'm gonna
I'm
get this. I'm
laughing
gonna,
at you giggling at this.
well, because it speaks to the fact that like in reality, I think we also get something. It's why I love my job, right?
Yeah.
Is that like it is a service I'm providing, it is work, and it's like profoundly meaningful and
Oh, yeah.
exciting for me to, I just got an email this morning um with somebody that we just completed a
The
course in
5.
CBTI with, and I would say it was slightly longer. There's some like other
Okay.
sort of unique facets of it that
Sure.
I think it was 10 sessions. But they just wrote me an email saying I just slept from they had many nighttime awakenings,
Okay.
like micro awakenings, having to go to the bathroom,
Yeah.
and they said they slept 6 hours straight for the first time in 20 years. And it just like
Oh my god. That is so lovely.
yeah, it's like it's the best feeling because then you think about, well, what does that mean for this person?
Mm.
And, we all know what good sleep feels like. We've at some point in our life had a good night's rest. And if you've persistently had bad sleep, a good night's rest, you feel like you're on top of the
Oh,
world.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so knowing that you can share that and give that feeling and experience to somebody while also knowing that the great thing about, there's again all types of treatments that are really useful while you're doing them.
Mhm.
And then maybe the effects dissipate over time and you have
Okay.
to return to therapy.
Sure.
Most people, once you've learned all of this information, develop these skills, address the maladaptive thoughts associated with your sleep, just keep getting better,
Oh,
right?
work.
And I've
That's
explained that to this
awesome.
person that I'm like, my hope is that like, and it was incremental, right? Each week there would be like a slight reduction in the number of nighttime awakenings.
Yeah.
And I kept being like, I'm like, you got this. Like, we just got to keep going and
Yeah.
it's going to get better and better and better. And eventually over time, you can be like, me.
Yeah.
Heavyweight champion of the world, sleep expert, where like 98% of my life, I have really great sleep. I wake up feeling fully rested.
Whoa, that's wild. Okay, a few things. One, maybe I should check out CBTI, but two,
Yeah, get into
two,
it.
I know for real. This sounds awesome. My my next thought was for anyone listening, right? Because I'm sure folks are listening right now and they are wondering, how do I know if CBTI is right for me? How do I know if this is something I should seriously consider versus something like, you know what, I just need to spend less time on my phone before I go to sleep and blah blah blah. So what are some things people should maybe keep in mind or ask themselves when considering if CBTI is right for them? What should they think about?
So I think the most I'm going to say a couple of things on this. The first and probably the most important is appreciating that like CBT for insomnia was developed for people who are experiencing insomnia.
Insomnia. Hmm.
that was that's when I talk about the effectiveness rates, that's based or rooted in sort of these clear assessments of insomnia as a disorder and looking at its change over time.
Okay.
And those numbers dramatically vary, right? So like the number of people, the adult lifetime prevalence of insomnia is about 10%
Okay.
of the US, and whereas about 1 in 3 adults experience, like, sleep disturbances, so, like,
Ah, great
having a couple bad
distinction.
nights yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So, insomnia as a diagnosis involves, 1 or more, challenges of sleep. So, difficulty initiating sleep, which is falling asleep,
Hmm.
difficulty maintaining sleep, which can be difficulty staying asleep with frequent awakenings, and or early morning awakenings with an inability to return to sleep. So those challenges at least 3 nights per week for at least 3 months.
Mm.
And
Mm,
Then sort of that qualifier for all mental health disorders, which is it causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, educational, or other important areas of functioning.
right.
So really, if you're thinking to yourself like, I maybe CBTI is right for me, technically you would want to meet, the idea of having we'll just say bad sleep
Sure.
3 nights a week for 3 months, then you're likely gonna be a very good candidate for CBTI and
Okay.
will potentially see the most impact. And that's when, I think especially if that's what you're thinking or noticing to yourself, um, seek out like a specialist, like someone who's really trained. The University of Pennsylvania has a directory of CBTI providers
Okay.
for every state. So it's people who have been trained and registered.
Gotcha.
I'm in there. But like, so
Yay.
you can find people who can help you. That's, I think, the obvious time to seek out CBTI.
Okay.
What I will say is that the course of treatment can also look very different depending on what the person's presenting with. I've done CBTI light, I guess I
Right.
would call
Okay.
it,
Yeah.
with, patients that I'm working with who just have some sleep problems, right? Their
Hmm.
sleep isn't optimal. And so we might spend 2 to 3 sessions using all of the skills and the knowledge of CBTI to improve their sleep. So
Okay.
there is something to be said for, CBTI is for everyone. I
Right.
think like the core idea behind all of it and my my new mission in life, right, is like help. I was about to say make America sleep again. Um, but there has to be a
We'll
better way of saying
workshop
it.
it. We'll
We'll
workshop.
workshop it. Put America to bed. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but sleep is for everyone. Good
Right.
sleep is for everyone, and there is core life information that everyone ideally would know about sleep that comes from CBTI,
Hmm.
which is where, controversially, and this is bad for my own business, but I will say that that's where I think the utility of like those apps and online programs, and I'm sure there's like a self help book out there,
Sure.
those can be useful because, again, what many people, the majority of the world lacks is like a foundational education in sleep, which
Right. Right.
doesn't need to come from someone who's spent a decade specializing in this area.
Yeah, that is really helpful to know that if for anyone listening, if you are interested in improving your sleep, maybe you don't have insomnia, maybe you don't fit the criteria for that, but you'd like to improve the quality of your sleep, just starting by educating yourself. Like what is sleep? What does it do? How does it function? I think understanding the biology maybe and some of the psychology around it is a wonderful place to start because I agree. I think at the core of a lot of misunderstandings and tension is just like a lack of awareness and a lack of education slash understanding. So it sounds like that would be a great place that anyone can start learning about sleep, obviously through like a trusted source, not just some random person on the corner who's shouting about sleep, but maybe preferably someone who is trained, or if that trained person wrote a book or what have you, right? Preferably. And then consistency sounds like that is like another core principle of quality sleep, even if you stayed out super late the night before, waking up around the same time. Is there like a third thing that you can give our listeners if they were interested in starting this like sleep improvement journey?
I mean, I think that again, where CBTI becomes so customized is everybody does things a little bit differently,
Mhm.
sort of like the potentially problematic behavior. So what I would say is look at sort of, you could look at like a list of sleep hygiene topics, and, many of them are not going to apply to you. Like
Right.
some people, I don't know how or why they survive, but don't consume caffeine. So, like, you wouldn't dive into that. However,
Right.
when you see something that really resonates and you sort of think, like, oh, that's part of my life, start to ask those questions why, like, push back and try and understand. Because, everybody, I think, one of the limitations I see now, especially with this idea of sleep hygiene, is everybody talks about it. And it's like at this point, everybody knows, like, you shouldn't be looking at your phone 2 hours before
Right.
bed. You shouldn't drink caffeine after 2 p.m. Like there's all these rules that are in place, but no one actually engages or sort of follows through with them because in the back of your mind, I think of it as like there's like competing voices, right?
Yeah.
There's a voice that's kind of like, "Oh, you saw that list and it said you shouldn't be drinking caffeine." But then there's this more powerful voice in your mind that's like, "But you're tired and we still have 3 more hours of work
And
and
I
it would be
need
really great
it.
to have like I
Right.
need it."
Right.
And that will overwhelm that voice in your brain that's like, "Oh, I saw that fact."
Right.
Whereas if you build upon that fact and really understand, I uh, I posted about this today, is talking about sleep and understanding that, like, actually with caffeine, what's so interesting is many people are often not even aware of the impact that it's having on their sleep.
Ah,
It's sort of I describe it as this, like, silent thief
yeah.
where, um, the study that I referenced was looking at how, what they found is in people who consumed caffeine within, like, 6 hours before their bedtime, saw a significant reduction, in sort of the objective quality of their sleep, and sort of they sort of, on average, lost 1 or more the equivalent of losing 1 or more hours
Okay.
of sleep that night, but the next day people didn't perceive themselves of having lost that hour. They thought they were
Oh,
fine. So
wow.
it's like there's when you
Your confused body again. There's the confused body again. And then your mind is going based off of what your confused body is saying. And it's
yeah,
going, oh,
you're
okay,
like, "I
well, we're
slept I
fine.
slept 7 hours, we're fine."
Right.
But
Right.
in reality, it's actually stolen an hour from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you and that's just one tiny example, right? But when you start to dive in and build up that voice and make it stronger and more realistic and believable and
Mhm.
factual, then all of a sudden when there's that competing voice, you can win some of those arguments and
Yeah.
effectively make that behavior change. I think I mean, again, there's like a whole world of sleep hygienes and tips and tricks. The other one, like, outside of the consistency, the sleep-wake cycle, one something that I think is so profoundly important, and I found especially useful in my own experience is, like, light exposure.
Mm.
Light is, what's called a Zeitgeber in
Zeitgeber.
German.
German.
Say it in
Okay.
German, yeah, it's German for time giver. So it's,
Ah.
Zeitgeber is like Zeitgebers. That's how the American version of it is anything that, indicates helps indicate your circadian rhythm, like
Right.
your sleep-wake cycle, and light is the most powerful one. So, like, when you wake up in the morning, exposing yourself to light I actually, for winter, got myself, like, a SAD lamp, a seasonal affective disorder
Oh,
lamp that has, like,
yeah.
a high lumen, um, it's high
High
lumens?
lumen.
It's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
it's
yeah. Like
lumens is
wattage
this
or
yeah,
voltage or something. Oh,
yeah,
high lumen volt. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
and and it, like, blasts me with that light in the morning. But it is I found it to be so useful in getting my days like, I would always drag in the mornings, but it's
Oh,
because it's so dark out and we
yeah.
need the sun generally, we rely on the sun to tell us it's time to wake up,
Right.
which is why, like, at night, you wanna dim your lights as well because otherwise, when you're staring at a screen, it's sending a signal to your brain to it's like, "Wake up, it's daytime."
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
really being conscious of light exposure, I think, is another really it's such an easy one to work with,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
that's why I love my little sad lamp. I, like, make everybody buy them now. I'm like, just it's like, it'll be the best $60 you ever spent, like
Oh, that's good to know. And and of course, folks, if you are genuinely interested in exploring CBTI, do a little bit of research, right? Check out the University of Pennsylvania's directory of trained therapists. I love the idea of people equipping themselves with knowledge and seeking knowledge. I think that's wonderful. And there are trained professionals who are more than happy to. I mean, they get off on this stuff. I mean, they want to share their knowledge and their information with you. So seek out a trained professional and start with a conversation, start with a consultation, right? Jim said it here. It can be as little as 5 sessions, maybe a little bit more, depending on the circumstances. But, I like to I like to encourage folks to find a balance between, seeking knowledge and informing themselves and like doing their own research, quote unquote, while also having conversations with professionals who have spent, their entire professional or academic life researching this. Like there's something to be gained from those individuals. So, feel free to seek those folks out.
One and I'm glad you said that because I will say as much as I'm a proponent of, self-study and engaging in your own research, again, you usually end up limited by sleep hygiene tips and tricks and
Right.
knowledge around those things. And that's usually, if you have insomnia, that's usually not going to be sufficient. In fact,
Right.
I think I can confidently say it's not going to be sufficient.
Right.
It comes down to, and I should have added this as like the third thing, not slight, is that it's respecting it as a relationship that you're going to have for the rest of your life.
Right.
And that's where therapy, I think, becomes so valuable and
Yeah.
important because you're working on your relationship with your
Mm.
sleep while building a knowledge base. And the one other thing I'll add, the great thing about CBTI is you can do it like, you if you had a referral for me, Omar, like you could continue to keep seeing the person that you're working
Right.
with
Right.
and I could see them, on a different day because the nice thing is there's overlap, but within, when it's CBTI for insomnia, it's so specific that like it's not likely not going to interfere with the work that
Right.
you're already doing.
That
It can
makes
be
sense. That makes
a
sense.
really great complement
Mhm.
to the existing therapeutic relationship
I
you
mean,
have.
it's not that dissimilar from clients that I strongly recommend going to couples therapy. I'm seeing them individually, they're in a relationship, and I will say, like, I think couples therapy will really complement our work and will supplement our work and will only make our work like that much more enriching. So I don't see it that dissimilar to that. And I mean, and folks, the other, I guess, like, compelling argument for seeking out a professional to talk about this. Every time this topic comes up around Jim, he lights up. You're not going to see it in this video because I'm not doing video recordings yet. But like Jim is like talking about sleep and sleep wellness and sleep hygiene and the research. He is like lit up right now and with like a huge smile on his face. Like he loves to talk about this, which is again I think another compelling reason why um uh, you know reaching out to professionals and to supplement what you've already learned, but like reaching out to professionals is, I don't know, it's just it's enriching in a different way. Like these are folks that want to share this information with you so badly. They just like want to geek out, they just want to geek out around this topic and like share it with you. So by all means, do your own research, also seeking the trained folks out because they love talking about this stuff, I can guarantee you.
Well, it's true. It's true. It's true. I love talking about sleep. It's my passion. And I think I called it my king earlier. Um, but there's also, what I will sort of one more sort of plug, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be with me, but like the great thing about CBTI is like the efficiency of it.
Mm,
The thing is, I'm taking decades worth of research and filtering and organizing and then customizing the treatment protocol
mm,
based on what makes the most sense for you to know as an individual.
wonderful.
Whereas if you are as doing your own research, there is so much information and so much misinformation out there
Right.
that you could spend months filtering through the weeds. And so I think all the time, like, it's like when somebody has such a specialization in this area, like, why not seek out that knowledge from like the informed
R-
expert rather than trying to do it's like don't reinvent the wheel. I
yeah.
already did all the studying for this.
Right, copy
Let
off
me
of
give you
Jim's homework.
take my
Yes.
notes. Yeah, copy my homework.
Yeah.
Cheat off of me, please.
Cheat off of it,
Yeah,
please.
I'll help you ace the exam.
That is so true. That is so true. So Jim, one question that I ask every guest is, what is one piece of advice or wisdom that you've gotten from the mental health slash therapy world that you swear by? So this can be something you've learned in your own therapy. This could be something you picked up on from school or a book or a podcast or what have you. But what is one piece of advice or wisdom that you live by that you've gotten from the mental health world?
Um, good question. There's it's so funny. I thought as soon as you said that, I immediately had a thought, and I know that as I share this, especially if any of the like interns or postdocs that I have worked with previously hear my response, they're going to be rolling their eyes because it's something that just I think really spoke to me. I used to have this professor when I was in Boston um, who would say this phrase and would repeat it. He was one of the he was like a wizened old man who would sit silently for the majority of an hour in a seminar and then just say one thing and just one
Oh,
line and you'd
wow.
be like I'm like
Y-
the wind blows through my hair and I'm pushed back into my seat. I'm like, wow, that went right into my heart.
yeah, yeah.
But he would always say, "Don't try to hold the complexity, let the complexity hold you."
Interesting. Don't try to hold the complexity. Let the complexity hold you. Say more. Expand on that, please.
Yeah, I think what's funny is it took me, hearing it 20 times. I used to be like, "What do you say?" And then over time, it started to make more and more sense, I think it's both transformative in how I think about clinical work, but also thinking about sleep, where early in my career I felt this pressure to have all of the answers and figure out every variable and control
Mm,
for every outcome and make sense of every contradiction. And I think that in many ways is what researchers are trying to do. It's
of
like,
course.
how do you make sense of these complex phenomenon
Of course.
that are hurting people or holding people back? And, when you start to look at things like existence, but within that sleep, it's inherently complex. So you can do everything right, follow every protocol, and still have a bad night's sleep.
Yeah.
And appreciating that you don't have to resolve all of the complexity or hold it all
Mm,
together, and really allowing yourself to sit with uncertainty and let the complexity reveal what needs attention.
wow. I really appreciate that. Any, a lot of the answers I get often revolve around concepts like uncertainty and control. And one of the things that strikes me about these nuggets of wisdom is that we're all basically saying the same thing, but depending on how we are wording it or phrasing it, it's going to land with everyone differently. Do you know what I mean? Like someone who heard someone else talk about you got to let go of control and be comfortable with uncertainty did not resonate with that the way they're resonating with this phrasing right now. Like, do not hold the complexity, let the complexity hold you. Like, that is going to land with someone in a different way versus someone else speaking to that very thing. So I appreciate that a lot. That's like poetry. I love that. That is so.
Well, that's what I thought. That's why I like to share. But it's so funny whenever I say it, people are always like, "What?"
What?
But it is. I mean, it's about the illusion of control, and it is appreciating again, I have a very analytical mind that I think would very easily lean into more of an anxious mind
Yeah.
if I didn't hold on to that principle because,
Mm,
when you look at anything, right? Like I'm looking down on the street and you start to appreciate the complexity that exists within each person walking by
yeah.
and the complexity of what it took in the evolution of the car and then start to think about the environment and the political state. Like there's more information and the complexity to our existence than we can ever begin to hold. And sleep is just one area
Mm,
where you can't again, I said it earlier, it's like you can't win or you can't biohack it. You can't beat
yeah.
it. It's bigger than we can even begin to understand.
Yeah.
And when you appreciate that there are these things that are bigger than you are and that are defy our minds, it just makes it a little easier because then you can also be a little more self-compassionate and
Right.
appreciate that it's like, okay, this is normal and sleep is a paradox and that or trying to deal with your sleep issues can be a paradox because the more you try to struggle with it, the harder
The
it
hard, yeah, it's like a finger trap. The more you try to pull it apart, the harder, yeah, it sticks on you. And again, I know I've made this analogy already, but with thinking about sleep as a relationship, I'm reminded of couples therapy, where very early on, there's often a conversation around this is not about who's right or wrong. This isn't a competition. No one's on trial. No one's winning here. That is not what this is about. And you have to take a similar, what I'm learning now is that you have to take a similar approach to sleep. Like, there's nothing to beat, there's nothing to hack, there's nothing to win. This isn't a competition. This is a team sport. It's like you and sleep are in this together forever. So it's more about like cultivating that relationship and making sure it feels like really solid and collaborative and aligned versus adversarial, which is what I think a lot of the biohacking culture, that's how it reads. It's like I'm gonna trick sleep into relenting, into doing what I wanted to do. And it's like that is not how any relationship works. Not any successful, healthy one, at least between two adults. You know what I mean? So yeah, I appreciate that.
Well, and I love that. I'm like, I'm thinking about now how to like incorporate that into my branding because it really it is like couples therapy. You're
Yeah.
fostering this relationship, but what adds to the complexity and why it's so important to look at it in that way is that unlike a relationship, there's no exit. Like you
Right.
cannot like this is a lifelong relationship,
Yeah.
whether you want it or not.
Right.
You have to face it
Yeah.
and you have to learn to work with it because you actually have no other option.
Yeah. That you can't break up with sleep. You can't.
No,
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. This
no,
is it, girl.
because yeah, yeah, it will never leave.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the more you hate on it, the more it's going to I mean, it's like, it can be a potentially harmful relationship.
Right.
The more
Right.
you struggle with it, the meaner it's gonna be to you.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
takes it out on you during the day. If you
Oh
don't give
yeah.
it what it needs, it's gonna beat you around
Right.
and make you feel really bad about yourself.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, this has been so helpful and informative. Thank you so much, Jim. So, where can folks find you if they wanted to follow along, if they wanted to reach out to you to potentially work with you? How can folks do that?
Um, a couple of different ways. I just shameless plug, started a Instagram account called Sleep Shrink at Sleep Shrink, which I'm trying to just provide sort of what I've been talking about this whole time, which is
Awesome.
just some clear basic foundational information about sleep and what we can all be doing to improve the quality of our sleep. I'm not trying to sell anything. just just trying to educate. And in my mind, I'm framing it as like teaching.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like giving lectures for the modern age. And I also have a website, alwaysinreach.org, where through either of those avenues, there's my contact information, and you can reach out. I'm in the University of Pennsylvania directory. Um, so yeah, and I'm happy. I think one of the things that I really, as I try to do more education, it's part of it is an initiative to recognize my role and my ability to support people more broadly outside of the individual relationship, which is what
Mm.
therapists traditionally hold.
Hmm.
And so I'm also within reason happy if people just want to reach out with questions. I'm happy to answer those or create posts about them. Um, because I think again a lot of people are struggling with there's unique variation, but individual
Yeah.
challenges that
Yeah.
I'd be happy to speak to.
Thank you. That's so lovely. And for any therapists, I mean, also you think about your caseload. Think about any of your clients who are maybe struggling with sleep within whatever varying degree, right? Whether it's not ruining their life, but it's like something that keeps coming up, or if it's something that's like really causing a lot of psychological distress or harm, and everything in between. So if you have a client, send them Jim's way, and that this could be like a lovely working relationship that you get to have with Jim.
Th- Thank you. Well, and I'm so glad you said that because I think that's one of the most important pieces is like this. I think what I'm hoping to accomplish provides a lot of opportunity for collaborative work.
Right.
Like it's not like sleep is its own domain,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's what I would love to be doing more of, or own exclusively working in that area. And so, yeah, I would love to collaborate with folks and see what we can do to improve people's mental health.
Beautiful stuff. All right. So, folks, as you know, Jim and I, we are therapists, but this podcast is no substitute for good old fashioned therapy. So take what's useful, leave the rest, and don't forget, therapy makes you hotter. Bye.